My name is Leah Gould-Hawes, and I am the new statewide director for the Centers for International Trade Development, known as the CITD. And the CITD have been around since 1989, so almost 30 years. We are a state-funded agency that provides free or low-cost training and consultation for small to mid-sized companies looking to expand into overseas markets. Or those companies that are doing some export trade activity and looking to grow their footprint overseas. We partner with the Small Business Administration and the SBDCs, and also the U.S. Commercial Services, in assisting companies kind of between those two entities. And we're probably most well-known recently for a program that we have facilitated in the state of California on behalf of the Federal Small Business Administration, and that is known as the STEP program, and that stands for the State Trade Export Promotion Program. And what that is a national competition that's held, and each state submits to receive up to $900,000 from the federal government. And then those funds are, once awarded, dispersed to our smaller companies to support export trade activities. So, having said all of that, I'm very excited to host this discussion this morning. We are particularly focused on e-commerce right now from a center standpoint, because as most of you are well aware, it's a great opportunity for our smaller companies to start engaging in export trade activities. And so the way that we have looked at e-commerce and led our efforts on behalf of companies in that regard is, we provide some training, and our BEAM director will talk about that because we're government and we love acronyms. Of course, we have an acronym for our program, BEAM, which stands for Business Advanced E-Commerce Management. But Ruth Emanuel is my colleague. She runs the Center for International Trade Development in Los Angeles, and we have 5 other centers. We are in the midst of a reimagining of our network of service providers as part of a statewide refresh, particularly under our new governor. But as I was saying, we are looking right now at deploying e-commerce training statewide. And so, having said all of that, let me make some quick introductions. My colleague, Ruth Emanuel, as I just mentioned, is the new Los Angeles director of the CITD, and she also plays the dual role, as do I, of working on behalf of the California Community College Chancellor's Office, specific to global trade. In that role, she's known as the Deputy Sector Navigator, and we both work in trying to increase the amount of global education that is taught on our college campuses. And then our star of the panel, if you will, is Kai Lee. He is the Vice President of International for Revolve Clothing. And Revolve Clothing, for those of you who don't know, is a high-end e-commerce retailer, one of the largest in the world. They've been around for 15 years, and under Kai's leadership for the last 3 years, have grown substantially in their overseas market. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Leah. It's good to see everyone here and talk about a lot about e-commerce and e-commerce strategy. So the BEAM program is a fairly young program. We've been around for now about a year, thanks in part to a grant that we got from the International Trade Administration that kicked us off because we felt like e-commerce was the way to go in terms of increasing or encouraging businesses to go global online. And what the program essentially does is helps companies develop a digital strategy to help them sell more online. And what we mean when we talk about digital strategy is fourfold. One is figuring out what your objective is for selling online. Is it just to promote awareness, or are you are you selling directly on your website? The second thing about digital strategy is figuring out if there's a market opportunity for your product. What is your competitor doing out there? Are they selling? What's the e-commerce landscape in terms of the region or the country that you're trying to target? And then the third thing is the e-commerce mix, the channel mix. Yeah, obviously you could sell directly on your website, but you could also sell on a marketplace. You could sell through third-party distributors, or nowadays you can sell directly on social media. So what is the mix that you're going to employ? And primarily the businesses that we serve are small to medium size, so resources are limited, and we got to figure out what channel mix that they need to focus on. And finally is kind of what are the web metrics that you're going to use so that whatever resources that you're deploying, you're getting a return on. So those are the 4 things that we focus in the program, and essentially it's twofold. It's for a lot of the small businesses that we serve. It's really the learning curve, the education, and figuring out what are the components that you need to know when you're selling online through global e-commerce, and also the one-to-one consultation, because what works for your industry is very different from the other. So in our program, there's people from advanced manufacturing, from consumer goods, from health and beauty. So what strategy works for them doesn't necessarily, you can have a one-size-fits-all approach. So it's the consultation and the education that really makes the BEAM program. And really the way we do it is, we are a government entity, so what we do is we aggregate the resources. Like I said, the federal partners like the U.S. Commercial Service that helps us give us the intelligence about these different markets that have connections on the ground. But we also have private partners like GetGlobal, which I'll talk a little bit more about, that really kind of, basically collects insights from people like Kylie that are doing things on the ground and say, okay, how can we use those insights back into the strategies for other small businesses? So that's kind of what we do at BEAM, and we hope to grow the program and promote it and really have that as a resources for businesses out here in California.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Kylie. I'm with a Los Angeles-based online fashion retailer called Revolve. I've been Revolve for 3 years. Prior to Revolve, I spent 5 years at Amazon.com in a variety of different international roles, including Amazon Global, as well as leading international business for Shopbop, which is a luxury fashion subsidiary for Amazon. At Revolve, we carry 800 brands. We carry over 200,000 SKUs. We ship to over 150 countries. We support 9 different foreign languages. We transact in 83 different currencies. We have return facilities in Hong Kong, Sydney, and London. And we provide free return in European Union, Hong Kong, Australia, as well as in Canada.
Luckily, we were able to help Kai figure out the foreign market. I'm kidding. So I think, I don't know, in the audience, are any of you, using e-commerce as part of your business strategy for global sales currently? What I can see? Okay. Well, I think what we wanted to do is sort of parlay back and forth in terms of, what are the challenges that the smaller to mid-sized companies are facing from an e-commerce strategic standpoint, and then having this opportunity to engage with Kai and his vast experience in the global market. What does that look like from a pain point standpoint and the differences between the two? So maybe, Kai, if you don't mind, can you kind of share with us some of the pain points that were part of Revolve when you came on board and how you addressed those?
Yeah, I think that the pain points that Revolve encountered, also including my previous experience and also from other retailers that keep asking, can be summarized into a couple key questions. I think when any retailer thinking about expanding their market international, I think the first question coming in their mind is, how big is the opportunity? I hate to be providing a generic answer, but for well-established retailers, roughly about 40% of your business, for US retailers, that roughly about 40% of your transaction come from international markets. So it's a very sizable chunk of your business. And the second question people often ask is that, great, so where should I go? Which market should I go first? I think there's a lot of free tools out there where I'm a very data-driven person. I think that I was lucky working for Amazon, Revolve, they have very, very similar culture that we're extremely data-driven. So a lot of decisions are made by data. So if we don't have internal data, I think there's a lot of good free tools out there that can serve as external data. My favorite tool is actually Google Trend. It's basically, Google Trend is a way to measure keyword search volume from a different region on a per capita base. So for example, if my brand name is Revolve, I can put Revolve keywords into Google Trend, then Google Trend is going to tell me that the country with highest search volume per capita is coming from Australia. So you can do the same thing for yourself as well, either put your own brand name or your product name into Google Trend. It's a free tool that you will be able to see a heat map of your search volume around the world. I think one thing I want to point out about Google Trend is volume per capita, so it's not the absolute search volume you have. So that's a great way for you to see where you have interest, where you have existingly, you have awareness already. That helps you to focus. And the third question that people often ask is, great, then if I want to go to UK, I want to go to Australia, I want to go to China, those are some of my hotspots, but who are my customers? I think that it's actually a very complex question, but I think the biggest lesson I learned in the last many years is that when you go to the international market, we should not assume that your international customer is an identical copy of your domestic customer. That I still remember that 7-8 years ago, that when I was working for this world famous e-commerce giant, that walking my first day walking my office, this piece of paper on my desk, and they're basically describing my customer profile in different region. And there's one paragraph describing our customer in China. It says that her income level is $150,000 a year, and it goes on and on. While I was reading it, I quickly realized they're not describing a customer from China, they're describing a duplicate in the US, which they want to find in a foreign country. So I'm a data person, so I have to prove myself that what is the real income level or the customer profile in different countries. So for China specifically, what I end up doing is that I start looking at a shipping address for customers. By knowing their shipping address, I was able to correlate their rental value, and from rental value, you were able to extrapolate their income level. And it turns out for a customer who's with an average purchase order of $200, their income level is only $30,000 in China. But it becomes surprising that we by default we believe we're looking for a replicate of a customer in overseas market. So why they're not? I think there's many reasons to that. First reason is that regardless Revolve or Amazon, we're extremely proud of our service level in the U.S. At Revolve, we provide a 2-day service to anywhere in the U.S. We provide hassle-free, no question asked return service in the U.S. The service is a huge core competence of who we are, that we serve our customers right away. And over service level to foreign countries is also very high. If I can do a 95% fulfillment rate to Korea, Australia, or UK within 3 days. However, that when I really go to Korea, that I will not be able to compete with Samsung Fashion in terms of service level, because they deliver next day. I also cannot compete with Iconic in Sydney. They deliver in the same day. So when you move yourself, when you expand to international markets, some of your core competence that in your home world that will change or shift when you go into foreign country, you're going to lose some. At the same time, you're going to gain some. For example, if there's a dress on Revolve that you can find the same exact dress with the same price next block in Sydney, I bet my customer will go to the next block to buy it. She will get instant gratification. She will be able to try it on. There's no risk for her. Instead of waiting for 3 days and then getting the product from Revolve and to find out the size is wrong or the color does not match. However, if there's a product that on Revolve they cannot find locally, that's the product would get her out of bed 2 o'clock in the morning and order it from Revolve. So the example I just gave, basically saying that we move to the international markets, you also gain certain core competence, and that specific core competence in the example I just described is the variety. So I think that the key that when I want to communicate about customer, who they are, is that do not assume they're identical copy, that really looking at your core competence in the foreign market and readjust your market mix to adapt. And the last question is talking about how do I reach my customer? That's a common question. I think that's probably the most complex question. Those are things, daily activity that we breathe in every day. It's over daily life. So I try to stay on a high level. So in general, when we're talking about selling internationally, there's 2 broad approach. One is going through marketplace, and one is going through your own website. To me, I think the biggest difference between the marketplace and the website is that your own website It's a marketplace, it's a transactional website that people come here to look for, to transact a particular product they already have in mind. So when we're looking at Tmall, we're looking at Rakuten or marketplace you have in Korea or Mercado Libre that in Latin America. The one data point I think I found is striking is that 80% of the traffic to a pure product is through brand or product search. Basically saying 80% of the time that people was able to review a product because they know exactly what they're going to get. It's a transactional website. And that's on your own website. For example, Revolve, earlier I mentioned that we carry 800 brands. So there's a 40% chance when a customer comes in that they were searching for a specific brand on Google and then landed on your website, they will 40% chance they will actually end up buying something else. It's a place for you to browse. It's a place for diversity. It's a place to experience shopping is very different. And also on a marketplace, I think the biggest difference between a marketplace and your own website is that a marketplace, the repeat purchase rate is very low. So in general, on a marketplace, you're looking at 1 to 1.2, on average, probably 1.2 repeat purchase on an annual base. So basically saying you got 5 new customers this year, they bought 6 products, you're done. As on your own website, I think that repeat purchase rate would go up dramatically. We normally, in my particular business, in the fashion business and probably also luxury fashion business. So we're talking about price points relatively high. It's not just Revolve, but in many retailers, established retailers I talk to, we're almost looking at the same number. We're looking at 3 to 4 purchase a year. So one customer you acquired that you will actually be able to buy, they will actually make another 2 to 3 additional purchase for the remaining year. So what does that mean to a retailer? And I think there's a couple of things that are very, very different. One is that if you transact on your own website, when I'm looking at acquisition cost, I will be looking at lifetime value per acquisition cost. As you're on a marketplace, you should purely focus on acquisition cost per sale. The second difference is that if you are a brand owner or product owner, that you have substantial high margin, and then the marketplace is a good place to go, particularly if you have already gained awareness within the country. Within the market you want to go. Remember that marketplace is a place for you to transact. Of course, they will provide a better customer experience than a US-based website. Then that marketplace would make sense. But if you're a multi-brand retailer like us, that really we want to bring traffic in for people to browse product, different selection that was specifically to our style, then probably your own website would be your primary source of, would be your primary store to serve your customer. So those are the common questions that I always encounter from different retailers or from audience.
That's a huge complex explanation for a lot of important points that I think when smaller companies enter into global transactions, they're not really understanding some of the complexities that you just described. Ruth, you want to share maybe some of the unique challenges that our smaller companies are facing?
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with younger companies, obviously, and less complex, and Revolve always has a mature companies. So when we're dealing with young companies, it's really taking the time to do the analysis that Kai did. Really, it's the planning process, because, if you don't plan to fail, right? So we just really want to take that time to help them through some of these questions with the guidance, obviously, of experts and saying, okay, what are the markets that I'm going into? And he talked a lot about the e-commerce channel mix. What are the pros and cons of each mix? Whether should I be on a marketplace? Should I just sell directly on the website? It's figuring out which works best for them. Because sometimes a lot of the younger companies that we deal are very enthusiastic and they want to do it all. They want to be on Amazon. They want to sell on social media. They want to, go and still get a distributor and they can't do it all. So it's really that piece of analysis and the planning that is very important for a lot of the younger companies. And then the other thing is for the more mature ones, as they're actually going and doing these transactions, the biggest pain point obviously is the logistics and the regulatory environment and the payment. And logistics is what kind of fulfillment channels should I go through? How should I set my shipping prices? And for the regulatory, especially with the changing landscape of privacy laws, how is that going to impact my business? And when I go into these different regions, how do I protect my brand? And obviously, for payment, the biggest pain point is how do I get paid, and how do I make sure also my customers, I make the experience easy for my international customers. So it's for us, the pain point is they don't know what they don't know. So it's important to educate them and to help them go through that analysis, because most of the brands that we have, it's really usually just the owner itself who's doing the international, or it's somebody who is on the team now all of a sudden who has to pivot and do international. So there's a big learning curve that happens, and it's important to have expertise and insights from people like Kai and bring that back to them.
Yeah, and it brings up 2 points, and this is for both of you, but I'm curious, Kai, if you could kind of share with the audience what you talked about in terms of offering opportunities to emerging brands, because that is a way that they kind of bypass some of these complex strategic processes. And then also, if we can speak a little to how do companies determine which market they should go into? Obviously, you mentioned the data element, but I think our companies very early on get excited by all of the queries from foreign potential customers, and what's the best strategy with that?
Yeah, thank you. Revolve, we're recognized as the launching pad for emerging brands, so we carry a lot of emerging brands. And earlier on I mentioned that we carry 800 brands. A lot of them are emerging brands. So basically, newcomer, a new brand out there, they are able to, we bring them on board onto Revolve and bring them to the world. I think it's not, the reason that we become the launching pad for emerging brands, a couple of reasons. One is that we have a very strong brand marketing team, that we have a huge social following base in the world, that I think most companies are familiar with Revolve, particularly in Los Angeles, that we're a recognized company, that we are really able to shape the social media world. Social media is a very important tool for us to do brand marketing, and through a very, very strong follower base, also very large, we're talking about thousands, 10,000s of influencers around the world who are able to promote emerging brand to the customers' audience around the world. So that's something very special about Revolve. And because the large volume we have, that and also because we're a very data-driven company, that people oftentimes look at me coming from Revolve, they expect a very fashionable person. I'm not. I'm the guy sitting in the back room that crunching numbers. But it's the people like us that we actually tell the brand when they come to bring the product to us, and we actually help them making modifications. And we will help tell them that those are the features that we see are coming hot that you probably want to incorporate in your future design. That we also tell them that we're specifically looking for products in this fits those features that if you can design or manufacture those products. So we actually goes hand in hand with emerging brands. That on one side of it, we market them. On the other side of it, we use data to make them more efficient, more effective in their product design. So in terms of when I think about expanding internationally, that I will try to stay on a higher level. We normally, I think I've done this in many many companies. I think a lot of my colleagues probably, with a very strong data background, that we would take international expansion strategy in a very similar way. Is we always take a phased approach. So initially, that you want to cast the first phase when you think about going international. You want to cast a wider net. So of course, we still look at Google Channel or external data, trying to triangulate where are over most promising market. But overall, is that you want to cast a wider net that it covers most part of the world that you believe there's existing demand or there's potential demand. While you're doing that, you probably, of course, because you're going very wide, your depth has to be very shallow. So you're limited to working with companies like they have a global coverage, for example, Google or Facebook, they have a global coverage, or limited itself working with FedEx, UPS. Those companies are able to provide worldwide logistics. I think Ruth pointed out very rightfully that cost of logistic is definitely a prohibitor for smaller company go to expand internationally. We can later on talk about some Revolve example how we dealt with those. Once you start casting a wider net, you enable your global shipping. You won't take too long. In about 3 to 6 months of time, you will see certain countries lit up. So we move to second phase, what we call localization. Those are the time you probably want to choose a handful or a dozen countries that you really want to focus on. Then what you will be focusing on doing localization. That's when you're going to have translated website. At least you should get your checkout pipeline to be translated. You probably want to offer different currencies. You probably want to go on to different marketing platforms. For example, in China, you want to go to Baidu. Korea, you want to go to Naver. Russia, you want to go to Yandex. Japan, you want to go on Yahoo. You want to go on different social platforms. For example, Facebook does not work in China, so you probably want to go on Weibo or WeChat. Then you want to provide customer service in different languages that you have. So a lot of companies will stay in this localization stage for a very long period of time. When I say localization, really that all the activity just described focusing on 2 things. One is that you want to make sure you remove some of the purchase barrier from the different markets. There's frictions that in making purchase. You want to make them you want to relax those frictions, make them easier for the customer, so your conversion rate goes up. So that's your number 1 goal. Everything you try to do, localize, you try to make the conversion rate goes up. The second one is that you want to localize some of your marketing. The goal here is trying to make your marketing more effective. So you're basically trying to increase your ROAS. So in the second phase of localization, there's I list a number of activities, but you probably can find a couple of dozens of activities you can do that focusing on 2 goals that increase your conversion rate, increase your ROAS. And then a lot of companies stay in the second phase for a very extended long time, and then eventually they will move on to the third phase. So the third phase is what we call, that's really you want to trench in, you want to provide a native experience to the markets that you believe have long-term potential. So when I say long-term potential, I think compared to the first 2 phases, we're really responding to the market, we're reading the market data, we're analyzing it, we're making it more efficient. But in the third phase, you're really investing into the future. So there's a couple of things that comes very, very important because you're going to first put money out of pocket. You probably have to go to organization in order to make this happen. So the strategic fit, the market you choose must have a strategic fit with your company's long-term vision. And the second is that market must have a long-term growth, a lot of room to grow to. You probably don't want to choose a small but easy market that only grow for 3 years, but you want to choose a market have room to grow to for another decade. So those are probably the general approach. I know it sounds very vague. That if a lot of people like me that we have a very strong data background, that's how we would approach for international expansion.
Yeah, and I think just to rally on your point about the phased approach, I think that's really important also for younger companies because it's really important to, yes, like you said, cast a wider net and figure out first where they want to go and let the data kind of guide them. So just to kind of bring this to life with real life examples, one of the companies in our program, fairly new in the health and beauty space, creates kind of Shea products for hair and beauty, finding that she's getting sales not only domestically but from Canada and UK, some European other countries. So for her, what this in practice would mean is, just keep on getting those international sales. Don't turn away those sales. Make sure that she has the plugins and the necessary so that those international customers have good experiences on her own site before she goes into the second phase. So that's kind of an example of how we do the phased approach. And then for companies that are a little bit more, getting higher volumes, another company that we have is not in the health and beauty manufacturing, but around for over 30 years. They produce spa products. They were kind of the innovators in their field, and they're finding that with a lot of American manufacturers, a lot of their market shares has been dwindling over the years, and and obviously a lot of their colleagues are all out of business. They're one of the few American-made manufacturers in their sector. So they pivoted to e-commerce and said, okay, rather than selling through distribution models like we used to, let's sell directly on a website. And all of a sudden, they're getting a new life. And what they're finding is that all this parts that they've sold in the 80s, now there are all these markets wanting replacement parts. So they already have a targeted market within Europe that they could sell. And so we're saying, for them, just have a little bit more targeted approach. So meeting where they are at and not trying to do everything at the same time and just going through that phased approach, I think is very important.
I wonder too if we can circle back on the topic of customer service. Because I think for smaller companies, just trying to make sure that you understand your shipping and your payment and hopefully meeting the short-term demands in terms of customer expectations for 1 or 2 day delivery. But how critical is that localized and then native experience in terms of the customer service? And if you're a younger company, where do you start thinking about that?
Yeah, I think this customer service is definitely a critical part of customer experience. And I personally read every single customer comment today. I think I probably get a couple hundred customer comments every day, and I believe my CEO reads every single one of them. So we believe customer service, the contact with that customer contact is extremely important. Regardless of Revolve or at Amazon, I'm required every year. At least one day I spend to shadow customer service. Basically, I sit in with the customer service side by side. I listen to everything that they communicate with the customer. And it's a Revolve tradition as well as an Amazon tradition. And Amazon, they go even further that I'm required to work in a warehouse once 1 week per year. So that really understand the back end and the customer touch. I think that there's a lot of solutions out there for customer service. I think the Revolve's approach in terms of customer service is that we only really, until this year, before this year, that we only have one customer, before 2 years ago, I would say, we only have one customer service center, which is based in Orange County, California. However, we have toll-free numbers around the world that we transfer those numbers, those calls to our customer call center in Orange County. So we provide French, we provide Spanish and English service. And we also provide 24 hours English service. So the calls from Australia as well from the UK will be routed to the US as well. Then the second approach I think a lot of companies can do is, we're in a world today that everything can be outsourced. That outsourcing your customer service to some specialized company is also very cost effective as well.
I think that's a great suggestion and something our companies often don't think about in the swirl of other complex problems they're solving. But adding to the list of things to consider as a company engaged in e-commerce, can we talk about the trends and maybe, Ruth, I don't know if we have any examples in our current companies that are trying to think innovatively. But Kai, I wonder if you can share your thoughts on where e-commerce is heading and what companies need to start to consider in terms of trends.
That's a very good question. We breathe and live in e-commerce every day, learning those trends every day. And sometimes when I think about really try to summarize this, it's become a very hard task. So I probably share some of the trends that those are the ones that are on top of my mind. So the first one that I would like to share is mobile first. I think it's an old topic that the mobile has been gaining shares. We know today that mobile traffic share to e-commerce website is way surpassed desktop. So we're looking at the US, roughly about 60% of traffic. Some companies have 70% traffic come from mobile. But when you go to Asia, that number goes to 89%. However, that mobile transaction on mobile devices are still lagging behind desktop. I think that in the very near future that we're going to see the turning point that the transaction on mobile devices will be higher than desktop. I think it's very, very interesting to see that a company like Amazon enabled mobile phone number logins years ago. So you don't, as opposed to using an email to log in. So what's interesting, and then we see Shopify follow as well. What's interesting is that once you start providing a mobile phone number, as you log in, all your communication will be through that mobile phone number, meaning your order confirmation, your shipping notification, your invoice, and all that. That creates a closed loop for mobile transactions. That's because in the past, in your email, you could read your email on a desktop or on mobile devices. That creates a closed loop in mobile transaction, which will again fuel the mobile revenue growth as well. So I think it's, for a lot of companies, we have been talking about this for years. I think the ones that you really see mobile revenue is higher than desktop revenue, it is really time for us to think about when we design over the next iteration of our website, you really want to do the mobile first, meaning that you probably want to design a mobile website first before you design your desktop. And today, I believe 99% of us do the other way around. I think the second thing that because marketing is a very big part of my day-to-day work, marketing operation, currency catching, those are some of the key activities that I do day to day. Marketing, in terms of marketing, that I want to kind of share with the audience, the role of social media expands. I think that for a lot of us who are in the e-commerce business, for the last couple of years, we continually see that we're shifting more marketing dollars to social channels, as opposed to traditional Google channel, search channel, that we're moving more money, or higher allocation to the social channel. That if you look at Google Trend, the tool I mentioned earlier, when you search any established brand, most likely you will see a declining trend in search volume on Google. It is not because that brand is not doing well. That brand could be doing very well, but you will be still seeing a declining search volume trend on Google. It is because other channels are taking away those search volume, right? So in addition to social media, the two others are very obvious. One is Amazon. People now just go directly to Amazon, typing a product instead of searching on Google. The second one is because you guys are using iPhones, and then when you're going on your iPhone, you type a brand name, and your iPhone will suggest a website. That search will no longer go to Google, but go to somewhere else. So you will see a declining trend on Google Trend for key brands in terms of search volume. And the social media, that in the past is only, you do some post, that is mainly a tool for brand building and awareness building. So in a sense that social media only really stayed at the top of the funnel, of the purchase funnel, early funnel activity, that's where social media stays. And then in the last couple of years, social media was able to expand their role into the mid-funnel retargeting and post-purchase engagement. So that their role is drastically expanding in the last couple of years. And then when you think about, if we really look at e-commerce from the lenses of purchasing funnel, that the ability to track customers in their purchasing life cycle is a critical technical component. That when you look at Google, if you search a product or brand on your desktop, and then you move to a mobile phone, it is very, very difficult for Google to figure out those two devices actually belong to the same person. However, when you go onto social media, it's a completely different story, because you are logged in regardless of how many devices you have. They will be able to make 100% connection between this device and that device that belong to the same person. Because they can make that connection better, that we will retailers like us, we're able to serve you a more relevant advertisement or a more relevant offer. So in a sense that on social media, it's a secret sauce that they can really track customer better, that is making over-investment on social media with higher return on investment. And it's at higher efficiency that keeping us moving overspend to the social media. So that's the second kind of trend I believe that is very important to my day-to-day life. And the third one is, in talking about international, is that we definitely see a change in revenue mix. So for most of us, when we turn on over international shipping, that you will see Canada, UK, Australia, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, those traditional markets will automatically popping up. That you will see they're coming in with very strong revenue. So those are most likely for a lot of us, particularly in the fashion business, those are over top markets. And I believe that today there are still over top markets. However, the aggregated share of those traditional top market is shrinking. So what market are replacing those shrinking numbers? Mainly from 3 areas. So one is from over neighbor, Latin America. So we see Mexico, we see Colombia, we see Brazil that coming in very, very strong, that there's a higher growth from Latin America. The second one is Middle East, and the third one is Southeast Asia. Those are the 3 regions that they are still relatively small. They're not as big as the traditional market, but we see them rising very, very fast. And the fourth one, and then when we talk about trend, and then in my day-to-day life, I have talked about service. And serving over customer is very, very important to us. And we continually seeing that this trend has been going on for years, the same pattern. I wonder how far it's going to go, is that faster delivery. You want to be faster. That I believe when I arrived at Evolve, that my average transit time around the world is 10 days. Then I improved to almost close to 3 days time. Now we're moving to 2 worldwide. So basically saying that a customer who ordered product on Revolve on Wednesday from London, she will get it on Friday. The second one is returns. Those are 2 key trends that we see, that the customer constantly knocking on the door, the features that the customer constantly are requesting. A number person, I have to put that into a number. So we talk to Google, and then we ask that one of the discussion we have with Google is we try to quantify. If I'm able to deliver faster, and if I can provide all my international customer a promised delivery date, what's the increase in my conversion rate? And then Google's answer is 16%. So if you provide a faster delivery, and you can provide a customer at checkout a expected delivery time, your conversion rate will go up roughly about 16%. So those are the 4 trends I think would be interesting to share with the audience.
We have just a few minutes left. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience, but we're certainly happy to take them, yes.
I'm very curious. I know that because of the trade war going on between the US and China, that there was a kind of patriotic reaction in China. Is that affecting not buying American products?
I think I just had that discussion early on. I cannot speak to e-commerce industry in general. This is an easy question for me because I'm in the fashion world, so we're immune from all the trade war. People love to buy beautiful products, so we have not seen that impacting us. I think another thing that's interesting is that we talking about duty rate increase, but the e-commerce duty rate are still staying the same. Go to China, we're still looking at 11.2%. It's actually lower from last year, from 11.9%.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on your trend number 2 about social commerce, social channels in terms of where money's being spent and the barriers that are or not falling to click to buy? So what is happening that enables click to buy?
When you say click to buy, you mean?
So moving from brand building and image awareness, or even engagement with an influencer to actually buying a product through that social channel.
So when we look at there's definitely a common understanding out there that it is difficult to track a Instagram post, because you will not be able to click on it immediately and then go to your website and make a purchase. It's difficult. So the direct tracking for branding activity is lost in a lot of ways. First of all, so that's one set of questions. The other set of questions is that, let me answer the first question first. Is what you describe is absolutely true. We all believe that. But however, it does not mean that you cannot value the value of branding activity on Instagram. That we cannot make a one-to-one relationship, but we will be able to make a qualitative guess of the power of branding activity on Instagram. For a very simple example, that if you have a big influencer, and this influencer features certain had a certain branding post, and you want to see how does this influencer stack up compared to another influencer? Who is more effective? And the simplest way to do it, you basically serve an ad that targeting each of their followers, and you will be able to see ROAS that from the difference between the two influencers.
What about in China, like with mini programs, WeChat and all of that?
Yeah, so China is a completely different story. The ecosystem is very, very different. So Instagram it does not exist in China. As Facebook does not exist in China. So you have to really migrate yourself to a different platform. Not only that, the way that you structure your content has to be very, very different. The use of social activity in China is very, very high. So in a lot of sense, in the messaging we want to put out in the Western world, in China you have to even break it down to smaller pieces, because people are basically reading in taking an elevator or taking the metro going home. So you want to take a dinner size meal message into smaller bite sizes in areas, in countries that have very active social media engagement. In terms of the other part of the question of tracking is that we actually bring down customer to the mid and lower funnel. That you can do this completely 100% programmatically on social media, Instagram. Those are 100% trackable. The only link that you may lose is from a branding to click on the website, but those can be qualified using certain techniques.
We have probably time for one more question. Any other questions? Oh, yes, please.
I actually work for a data-driven company as well that deals with href-laying elements. So getting back to the globalization side, trying to make sure that your website shows up in the right region. Is there a strategy using CCTLDs, using country language selectors or anything like that, that you find that's more effective?
That's a very technical question. So if it's interesting when you look at Amazon, they definitely go for CCTLDs, right? So they have CCTLDs around the world. They have .fr.
Can you explain CCTLD?
CCTLD is basically a domain name, country level domain, top level domain name for a country. So for example, you have amazon.co.jp. So that's a domain name. But when you go into France, they have amazon.com.fr. So they have different domains for different regions. That's how Amazon's positioned. But I would also like to remind you that when you go to Amazon, you scroll all the way down to the very bottom. That's when they're actually linked that into a web that is still using the juice from Amazon.com to fuel all the other areas and all the other new website they actually launch. So that's Amazon's approach. I believe there's experts in the world. We all have different opinions. My personal opinion is actually you should go for a single domain. The reason for that is that because when you have multiple domains, that the power of backlinks being separated. But when you have a single domain, that I can aggregate all the power of all the backlinks from the world into one single domain. That single domain becomes much more powerful. And then it comes to the question is localization. That how do I get better index? I think that you already answered the question, href. But I think it's important also that we definitely prefer either have subdomain to represent a specific language, for example, cn.revolve.com, or have subfolder structure that not only map into a specific language, but map into a country and language level. That's my personal preference, but I think there's a lot of different debate out there. People all have their own beliefs.
Okay, so we are wrapping up. I want to thank everyone for being here and give Ruth a last moment to make any pitch for the program that we're...
Sure, thank you so much. Like I mentioned, the BEAM program is really an aggregate of this type of insights. We've been fortunate to have Kai through our partner GetGlobal advise us and put that contact and really feed into the program. We have a lot of expert insights from different industries. Obviously, he comes from the e-commerce retail space, but in other industries as well. At the same time, we at the state level also are trying to provide not only the education, but the real life tools. So one of the different tools that we're developing right now through our partner GetGlobal is really a platform, an accelerator platform for or young companies can go in and at least start the process, right? Figure out, okay, what is my harmonization code? Where is the where is the market opportunity for my product? Maybe a duty and tax collector tool, and the most important thing is an expert finder tool, not only here but in the regions that you that they're trying to enter. So it's important to aggregate these tools for them. And also, we always advocate for, the STEP program, and Leah mentioned it at the beginning, the State Trade Export Program. It's a grant program that's really designed for companies to help with the trade promotion effort. So companies have used it to attend trade shows, but we're increasingly advocating for companies to use it for globalization of their website. So it could be a simple thing as translating their website, or getting fraud protection, whatever it is. At least there are tools and support and resources out there. It's just a matter of tapping into them. Yeah.
Thank you, Kai, so much. Thank you,
Information.
Ruth. And we do have information about these programs out in the lobby as well. So thank you, everyone.